I think many, would you say that the Quran has been preserved letter for letter, dot for dot? What is your kind of understanding of the preservation of the Quran?
It has been preserved, but the what they call it, the harakah, for example,
diacritical marks.
The diacritical marks, those were added later, because for people to understand better. But what was added doesn't change from what it was. It's just to further help those who are new to the religion to understand better. So if those dots were not there, there's still people who can read it. But it's just there for people to read it properly.
So then, just to understand, get an understanding of your understanding of preservation, how would you define the Quran being preserved? What as a Muslim, how would you describe that to the audience?
I can address it as a Muslim, or actually I can go to the actual definition.
Yeah, or either or, because
for example, anything that hasn't been altered in any way, shape or form, has not been changed, and this goes that any kind of mankind has not altered with it, has not changed it.
Where's the source for that?
And frankly, the Quran has been preserved, we believe, since the time of the Prophet till now, word for word, letter for letter, haraka or vowel sign for vowel sign, word for word, letter for letter, haraka or vowel sign for vowel sign.
These teachers are, mashallah, the most qualified teachers in Europe. How does preservation work? And in other words, how has the Quran been preserved?
If it were the case that right now, at this moment, every single mushaf, meaning book or parchment wherein the Quran was inscribed, was to disappear right now, overnight, in every single Muslim community, you will have exactly the same book with exactly the same letters, with exactly the same vowelings emerge and be transcribed and be recited out loud amongst every single Muslim community worldwide.
We have chains, we have books, we have all transmissions, we have language, we have history. We have everything, right? One accent, another accent, third accent. This is, by the way, what they're referring to when they're saying there's so many different versions of the Quran.
To him, I said, if you prove that the Quran is not the word of God, I will leave Islam, I will go on holiday, I'll zone out, you won't hear from me anymore. I'll give my YouTube channel to somebody else, I will zone out, yeah?
Ali Dawah and Muhammad Ajab claim what most conservative Muslims claim. The Quran is eternal and uncreated. The Quran is perfectly preserved letter for letter, word for word. The Quran has no variants, and there's only one Quran. Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk and Yasser Qadi sum up this view.
Not a part of the makhluk. It was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ and preserved word by word, letter by letter, harf by harf. Even the pronunciation is preserved.
And the Quran, there's only one Quran. There are no various versions or whatnot. It's one standard copy of the Quran across the Muslim world. And really, there's not been any variant versions of the Quran. The Quran is the Quran for all sects and schisms and groups of Islam. And we also, all Muslims take pride in the fact there is but one Quran. There's no variants of the Quran.
Now, if any one of those claims made by these Muslim leaders can be demonstrated to be false, the Quran is false and Islam is false. So let's take a look at this argument. Is the Quran eternal? Is it uncreated? What about the argument that the Quran is perfectly preserved letter for letter, word for word, with no variants whatsoever anywhere, and that there is only one Quran? Is there only one Quran? And what about the tradition of how the Quran was orally transmitted? Does that make any sense? And what about the claim from Islam that it was Uthman who codified and pretty much canonized the Quran itself? Is that really true? Now let's examine the evidence. And here are some clips from Dr. J. Smith.
As the top copy. The other one over here is the Samarkand. We're going to get into this. We're going to unpack it. We're going to show you some of the problems with it. And we're going to actually quote from Al-Takulich and Ekmelan and Salah, the two scholars who have worked at all of these 6 manuscripts. These are the 6 major ones. So those are the first 2. We have also the Ma'il. This is the one that I know the best because it's right there in London. You can go down to the Red Black Gallery there in the British Library, And you can actually see this. Usually it's there for you to see, but obviously sometimes it's so famous that it's been sent all over the world. And we're going to unpack that, look at it. That's there in London, England. And this is the one that Darosh controls. He doesn't own it, obviously, but he is the one that has done the most work on it, known as the Petropolitanus there in the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, in France. So that's number 3 and 4. Number 5 and number 6 would be the Al-Huzayni manuscript, which is in Cairo. You can see it's a monumental text. It is enormous.
And the bigger it is, the later it is.
That's usually the case because these are modeled after the Christian manuscripts, which became monumental in the same way. And then the most famous, probably the best one, the most exciting, is the Sana'a manuscript in Sana'a in Yemen. We're going to be looking at every one of these, so I don't want to really take on it. But let's see what the scholars say. So when we go to these two men, this is the first one here. His name is Dr. Ekmeluddin Ihsanoglu. He's there in Turkey. He is founding director general of IRSISA from 1980 to 2004, secretary general of the organization of the Islamic Conference of Research Center. He's more of a political figure more than a scholar. The scholar is this man here. His name is Dr. Tahir Altukulic. He is the one that actually did the work. This is his book from 2002 to 2007. He spent 5 years along with Ihsanoglu, and they looked at these 6 manuscripts. They were the first to do so face-to-face, hands-on. They were the ones that had the access to them. He's a leading scholar in the Quranic studies, ex-president of the Turkish Religious Affairs, deputy in the Turkish parliament. These guys are in politics and in theology. Now, this is what he says. He says, according to Ihsanoglu, we have none of Uthman's mushafs. That's the first thing you need to know.
Meaning those are not the copies of Uthman.
None of these 6 are from Uthman. Nor do we have any copies from those mushafs. So these are not even copies of copies. These mushafs date from the later Umayyad period. That means the 8th century, because the Umayyad period goes from 661 to 749.
And that's the time of Abdul Malik, at least.
Abdul Malik and Al-Hajjaj.
That's
You're
right.
going to see all of these date from that after, except for one.
Which makes sense. If it started that time, we're finding manuscripts from that time.
That's right. Dr. Altukulic says, no serious scholarly work has been done on them until we did. We're the first ones to do any serious scholarly work on it. These mushafs date from the early to mid 8th century, he says. They are not Uthmanic, nor copies said by him.
The earliest manuscripts of the Quran are not from the time of Uthman. They come much later.
Try to put it into context of early Islamic history, which is usually what is done. And, even certain studies that have been on carbon dating are pretty quick to then compare their results with the traditional narrative or with the traditional narratives of the codification of the Quran, which, as many of our viewers will know, the traditional report is that there was one, there's certain stories which involve Abu Bakr, the first caliph, reigns from 632 to 634, bringing together the Quran on writing, on suhuf, on individual sheets. But the principal work to bring the Quran together into one mushaf, one codex, is that of Uthman, the third caliph, who reigns from 644 to 656, at least according to traditional dates. Now, okay, so I want to assess this claim, the Uthmanic claim, and bring in some other evidence that you raise in the book Creating the Quran. Because there could be other arguments for Uthman. Now, you've already mentioned in the beginning, the first 2 chapters, you deal with some of the traditional arguments that the Islamic sources attribute this to Uthman, therefore it is likely by Uthman. At least one argument that you address is the uniformity of the Quranic text, at least with the exception of the Sana'a palimpsest. The basic Quranic consonantal text is remarkably uniform across the manuscripts. So, doesn't that make it likely that there would be the project of one caliph who destroyed variant versions, just like we read about in the stories about Uthman?
Yes, I think that's true. But that caliph was not Uthman. The caliph was Abdul Malik.
And we gave a quick and brief background last time about the earliest Quranic manuscripts, and today we're going to focus on one of them. That's the top copy. And I want to say up front, you're going to hear a lot of Muslims mentioning to you that the top copy is the complete Quranic copy. That's not true. That it is the most accurate and compatible to today's 1924 Quran. That's not true as well. But I'll let Dr. J unpack all of that for us. Dr. J, welcome back.
Good. Nice to be back with you again. And this top copy, and I've got it right here. This is the top copy. This costs hundreds and hundreds of dollars. It's now probably thousands. This is a facsimile of the entire top copy. And you have to have it written in a script here so you can read what's here, because you can't read what's here, obviously, because this is such an early manuscript. It's an 8th century manuscript. It's not a 7th century manuscript. We already know that. And if you go through it, you can see pages, some part of it you can't even read because it's been water damaged.
Yeah.
So they didn't even keep a good care of it. It even looks like it's been written by different scribes and different over periods of time. So we don't even know how long it took to write this, and we can't do carbon dating of the text because of the fact that when you carbon date, you only carbon date when the parchment,
the leather,
the animal
exactly.
skin.
Yeah.
Not when the ink was applied to it. But let's just look at it. I'd like to go to the slides now, and let's just look at this manuscript, and let's unpack it a little bit. Well, you can see there's the cover, and you can see even some of the pages are missing. Entire pages are missing. Half the material is missing on that here. And you can see there, every time you see one of these columns here, that's from one verse to one chapter to the next. That's a surah heading. Let's go to the next page here. When you look up here, conclusions according to what uncreated, this is the scholar who had spent 5 years looking at it. He is the one that really controls this manuscript because it's there in the Topkapi Palace. He is in Istanbul himself, so he's had access to this more than anybody else. And he dates this to the second half of the 1st century and the first half of the 2nd century due to the voweling and the dotting. And so he's already putting from the early to mid 8th century. Even though we would like to publish this sacred text as the Musaf of Caliph Uthman, our research indicated that it was neither the private Musaf of Caliph Uthman nor one of the Musafs he sent to various centers. So he makes that admission right from the up-go. He dates it, again, to the 8th century. We're going to find out new material that's coming out next spring that's now going to date it even later. So hold on. I can't say it yet. I'm not able to do that because it's not been published. But there's a new scholar who you and I know, he's a good friend of ours, who has just finished his doctorate on the Topkapi.
That's right. Yeah, that's his
He's
specialty.
spent years studying just this manuscript, and he's going to give us some interesting new material, but it probably won't come to be published until next spring. So hold on to that, those of you who are watching. Conclusion of the Al-Takulich back in 2007, they said there are deviations from grammatical rules, the lan, and spelling mistakes in the Musafs attributed to Caliph Uthman. In fact, he concludes there are 2,270 instances where there is a difference from the consonantal skeleton of the Fard Musaf. The Fard Musaf would be the 1924, which was then in 1985 made the official text. That's the Hafs text that we all talk about. So that's this one that I have here, this little guy. This is the Hafs text. 1985 is when he says Fad. So when you look at 1985 and you compare it with the Topkapi, 2,270 letters, words, that means meanings and all. These are consonantal texts. Remember, this is consonantal differences, not dots or vowels. Mm-hmm. That's what he's talking about. Hugely significant. You'll see why in just a bit. Now, here's an example. Dr. Keith Small, when he was living, this is what two that he wrote in his book. You have the chapter 14, verse 38. You have the Topkapi over here, and it says, "You know what we conceal and what he revealed." In the Cairene text, the 1924, which is known as the Fad text 1985, the text that we have here in our hands, in that same verse, it says, "You know what we conceal and what we reveal." So from he, it's been pluralized. So that has huge significance.
Definitely. One is talking about, let's say the Topkapi is saying, it's almost like Allah is talking and saying somebody, let's say Muhammad is the one who revealed, or vice versa, right? Muhammad is talking about himself in a plural, which is uncommon, and saying that Allah revealed. In the second one, it's the same person talking about himself revealing something.
Or we could be the plural tense for God himself.
That's right.
God refers to himself in the plural tense all the way through the Quran.
Yeah.
Here's another one. This is Surah 3, 158. And in the Topkapi, it says, "If you should die or be slain, you shall not be gathered. But in the surah that we see today, it says, if you should die or be slain before him, you shall undoubtedly be gathered. It completely contradicts itself.
That's right. This is Judgment Day. So what's going to happen? Are you going to be gathered before him or not?
That's a theological problem there as far as belief and practice, if that's the case. I want to show you some of the material that Dan Brubaker has brought up with the Top Copy. Dan Brubaker has looked all through this. And here is a reference to chapter 9, verse 72. If you could just read that, if you can read that, I don't know if you can or not.
وَرِضْوَانٌ مِّنَ اللَّهُ أَكْبَرُ ذَلِكَ هُوَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ.
So,
and the huwa is the issue.
That is. There it is right there. See where the green arrows point? That little word, huwa, has been added at a later date.
There are 2,270 variants in that one Top Copy manuscript from the modern day Hafs translation that you have today, my dear Muslim friends. Is it true that there are no variants in the Quran? Remember, these manuscripts come after the time of Uthman, and it was Uthman who was supposedly burned all of the false variants and came up with the one true Quran, and that's the same Quran that's existed from the time of Uthman until now. That is a lie.
Manuscripts that they have in their possession, the Bibliothèque Nationale, 3 fragments of manuscripts, not full manuscripts. None of these are full. The Arab 328 is the largest, and it is only 26% of the Quran. The Arab 30G is the second largest. It's only 15% of the Quran. And the Arab 614A is only 4.2% of the Quran. So we're talking about 3 fragments or partial manuscripts. These are not full, these are partial manuscripts. Not even, just about, the largest is about a quarter of the Quran. What he says, François de Roche, is that even that 26%, there are 93 differences. That means manuscript variants. That means words or phrases that are different in this manuscript than what we have in the Quran today. And he noticed that there were different writers, different copyists, different authors. As I showed you, 2 pages different, 2 completely different styles of writing. And that there were later modifications and erasures and additions. So when we look at this, let's just go and see an example. Here's where Keith Small looks at chapter 14, verse 37. And it says, Our Lord, I have settled some of my descendants in an uncultivated valley near your sacred house. Our Lord, that they may establish prayer and make hearts among the people inclined towards them. That's chapter 14, verse 37. When you look at the Quran that we look at today, instead of and make hearts among them, it's so make hearts among them. Now you might say that's not that different.
No, one is the result, the direct result of that, the so, and is just a consecutive, or a conjunction. Wow, basically here.
Well, what Keith says is the difference is subtle. But it is different because the repentance of the people is no longer a result of Abraham's settling people near God's sacred house, as in the Petropolitanus manuscript, but instead the repentance is something Abraham is requesting of God as a result of his action. In other words, so according to the standard 1924 Huff's text. There's the difference. So that has a difference in history. Also, it has a difference in theology. So you can see why that would make a problem. These are ones that Dan looked at. And when Dan Brubaker looked at these texts, he saw quite a few consonantal difference. Here you have chapter 34, verse 35, and you have what used to be kul has been changed to kalu. Now, kul means say. Kalu means they said.
Right, so in the plural now.
So now it's in a plural.
I'm sorry, from a singular to a plural.
From a singular to a plural.
Right.
And in that case, that would change the context again. That which only one man is saying.
That's right. That's right. One man is saying here, a group of them are saying this.
We are more than you in wealth and children. Now we are, he said, we are more. Now they said we are more. So who's speaking here? You can see that would change it.
Right.
So that's why from kul, or I'm sorry, it's not kul, it's kala, he said.
The singular one.
Kul would be imperative. In this case, it's kala. It's been changed with a waw and a aleph that's been added at the end. When you go to Surah 3, ayah 171, you have the dad, lam, fadlan, bounty, which is underneath, and here's an eraser. So you can actually see the word underneath. And what's fascinating, the word bounty has been written over the eraser with just 3 letters. but you can see below it was quite a few letters that had been erased. Why is that being erased? Well, obviously it doesn't fit with the Hafs text. Just like Kala has been changed to Kalu in the earlier one example. Here you have it from being standardized.
Perfect tense to an imperative.
So that's another example where the changes are from today. Then we come to chapter 2, verse 137. This one is very clear. Mithli, the word mithli, as was omitted when this was first written. And you can see B mithli has been added at a later date in a completely different nib. So it's obviously this is at a later time. Notice it also has the fatha and it has the kasra. So this was at the time when the vowelization now is introduced. So this is more likely a 9th or 10th century addition, or possibly even later than that.
The Quran has been erased and overwritten in manuscripts. So yes, the words and the letters have been changed. There are words and phrases that are different from those manuscripts and what is in modern day Hafs. Yes, the Quran has been changed. It has been altered. There are variants. What about the claim there's only one Quran?
Total of 30, if you wish, the 10 plus the 2 for each one of them, two narrators. And you even have links to where you can go and buy these different ones. I mean, it's like right there out in the open. It's not like there are secrets out there that you cannot really find them. It's available.
Show you what we have sitting right in front
and
of us.
I was going to ask you to explain to people, maybe now or next time, what is it that we're showing here? Why do we have these many different so-called Qurans?
Why are they sitting right in front of us? Well, folks, these are 7 that I just bought about 2 weeks ago. I got these online. You can buy these online. These are 7 different Qira'at Qurans. That's what we're going to get into. We're going to go look at not just these 7. These are 7 of the 30. 4 of them are from the 7, and 3 of them are from the other 21 that we're going to talk about.
Right.
Or in this case, we're going to get into that because we're going to talk about the 7, then the 10, then the 30. But these ones you can buy. I got these from Illinois. These are here in the United States. And I would encourage any of you who want to get into this field, buy them up now, because they're going to stop this once they realize how public we're going to make this, that every one of these Qurans that you see here is different. Not one of these is the same. And these has nothing to do with translations. This has nothing to do with English or French or Portuguese or any other language. These are all in Arabic, which is your language.
Yeah, and I want to just explain because people ask me sometimes, are you saying these are 2 different Qurans, different meaning, like when you open them, you're not going to find exactly the same thing? I know where you're coming from when you say different. Please explain, what do we mean by different?
So when you look at the Arabic, now this is Arabic and English. This is the Quran that we use today. This is the Quran that everybody uses. Well, now according to Yasser Qadi, at least 90% of the Muslim world uses this one. And this is one that we have to use, and it's called the Hafs Quran. We'll get into that later on, what we mean by Hafs. This is the Quran here. I'm going to put it right side up. Here we go. When you look at this one here, let's get it the right way. This right here, look and see what it says. It says Warsh right there.
Right.
Warsh.
Min Nafi'. That's
okay.
right.
There, it's from the family of Nafi. Now, this one here and this one are 2 of the most popular Qurans in the world today. This one is used in North Africa. This one is used all around the rest of the world, and this is one we have to use. But just looking at the Arabic text in these 2, there are 5,000 differences between this book and this book. Yet I've always heard from every Muslim in every corner, in every debate, in every discussion, that the Quran is exactly the same.
And
there's not one letter, not one word different.
That's exactly what I want you to say. When we say different, we're talking from a Muslim standpoint, folks. Muslims will tell you it's one Quran that has no changes whatsoever, yet, there you go, you've heard it, 5,000 changes just between these 2.
We're going to unpack that a little bit more in another episode. We're going to see some of the changes. We don't have the time to go through all 5,000. And we're not the ones who are doing the work. You and I haven't done the work here. This has been done by a group who, they're in Australia, working under Bernie Power, Dr. Bernie Power, and his whole team of Arabists. They are all Arab speakers. They are all Arab teachers. They are all grammaticists. They have looked at these 5, and they have broken them down into categories. And we're going to look at some of those categories, just to show you that with this, these are not incidental changes. These change not only wholesale words, but also the meanings, and in some cases the practices, and also some cases the beliefs. Never been permitted to be told, this is the only thing you're not permitted to question. You just believe there is only one Quran, and all the Qurans are exactly the same words, same letters, has never changed since the time of Uthman or the time of Muhammad, and the same that is in heaven. Now suddenly to realize, hold on a minute, there's more than one Quran. We're talking about 30 official Qurans. What 30 are we talking about? Let's go to the slide, and let's look at the slide here. Here's your slide, and this is straight out of Wikipedia. Anybody can get it, so I'm not making this up. Anybody can go up to Wikipedia, and you will see this list here. Not in this color, because this I've color-coded them so that to help you understand. Because I understand that some of this will go over the head of many people, so we want to really dumb it down to make it as simple as possible. Let's look at the first 7 on the left in green. Look at those green ones there.
So if you don't mind me just telling people, the left column are the original supposedly readers. The last 2 are what we call the transmitters.
The transmitters, the narrators, the students, the rawis.
Right.
This is the riwayat. Now, let's go to the left. Let's look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nafi from Medina, Ibn Kathir from Mecca, Abu Amr from Basra, Ibn Amir from Damascus, Asim from Kufa, Hamza from Kufa, Al-Kasai from Kufa. So 3 from Kufa, 1 from Damascus, 1 from Basra, 1 from Mecca, and 1 from Medina, which seems to suggest Kufa is pretty important.
That's right, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? You should see Mecca's name and Medina
They should all be
more
from
often.
Mecca, Medina.
Exactly.
Every one of them should be from Mecca, Medina to be Qurayshi. Only 2 of them are from Mecca, Medina. The other 5 are from the wrong cities. They're from the wrong areas. We'll be getting to that. We'll be unpacking that later on. Who are the one that chose this guy? Look and see who chose them. The guy in black right below them, Ibn Mujahid.
Absolutely.
Now here we need to look at the dates, and we will be putting this on a timeline in other episodes. But just for now, to introduce this, take a look at the dates. You can see for Nafi, he died in 785. Ibn Kathir, 738. Abu Amr, 770. Ibn Amir, 736. Let me just look right here. And this is Ibn Amir right here. This is the guy right here we're talking about. And he is Ibn Amir, 736. He is the earliest. So I've got him. You have him. You can buy them. I just got these 2 weeks ago. You can see it's all in Arabic, is it not?
It is, and also it's color coded for in terms of the different readings, and sometimes they have it on the side, on the margin.
So they're being quite transparent. You can buy these. I've heard so many Muslims say we're making this up. I've heard so many Muslims say these don't exist. I've heard so many Muslims say, no, you thought what you held up at Speaker's Corner back in 2016 was nothing more than just books that were blank, that you were just doing this just to try to mock us. No, folks, you can buy these. And if you get alquran.com, go and see it. You can see alquranonline.com. You can actually buy them if you want to, and if you all start buying them, they're going to have a huge killing. They're going to be, I'll probably get I hope maybe they'll thank me for sending everybody to their site. But this is right here in Illinois. You can buy them. These are from Illinois. This is from America. So if I can get them here in the United States, and here you can see there are 7 of them. I just ordered one about 10 minutes ago. That's going to be called Duri is coming. That's going to be coming in a week. So as more come up, I'll keep ordering them. Hattun is, and I'll be getting to her a little bit later. She bought many more than this. So this is the earliest, 736. Look at the date, 736. What's interesting is those were all chosen by Ibn Mujahid. What is his date? Look and see what his date is. 936.
Muhammad died in 632.
So we're talking about 300 years later.
At least.
So these were not even chosen for another 300 years after Muhammad.
And let's stop here. In 652, didn't Uthman also supposedly collect the Quran in a Qurayshi dialect and burned the other readings?
Burned all of them. If you look at those 7 that are there, these are the 7 of the most important. 5 of them are from the areas that Uthman burned. They should not be in that list.
That's true.
What are they doing there?
That is true.
Now there's 3 more. Look at the red ones. Go back. Look at the red ones. Go back to that slide
3
again.
more canonical readings. That's what
canonical readings that were added to the 7,
right.
and that's Abu Ja'far from Medina, Yaqub from Basra, and Khalaf from Kufa. Chosen by whom? Chosen by Al-Jazari. Look at his dates, 1429.
That's, folks, 700 to 800 years after the time of Muhammad.
Underneath Nafi, Al-Bazi, and Kunbul are from Ibn Kathir. And we're going to get into this in more depth, so I don't want to go through all the names right now.
Right.
But I want to show you where Hafs is. There is Hafs there. Hafs suddenly appears. He is from Asim, and he is from Kufa. That's going to be problematic. That we'll be talking about later. But so he is not even one of the official readers. He is nothing more than a narrator. He's nothing more than a student, as you call them.
That's right. And again, the idea, here is what's so interesting, is like you're told all the time, these are their students, and you think, oh, the student, of course, I'm passionate about my teacher. I want to be with them. I want to learn from them. They mentor me. And that's why I want to carry on their legacy.
And you want to carry on their writing.
That's right.
You would write the same thing they wrote, right?
But what we're finding out is these guys are even
they have
days
hundreds.
Later, you know,
they have thousands.
They couldn't have lived with their teachers.
And they not only are they not from the same century, many of them, they never knew their readers. They didn't even follow what their readers were writing.
Yeah, but that's why you have multiple ones.
That's why we're gonna. That's why we're gonna get. Now I just want to show you the next slide. Let's go back to the slides again. And here is the 23, or the 23 that Bernie Powers has now collected down in Australia. He was on the live stream with me a few weeks ago there at Fander Films.
Right.
He has spent, and his team have spent an enormous amount of time, I don't know how many years, going through these 23 and unpacking. But specifically, they have looked at the Warsh and the Hafs. We're going to be getting that to that later in another episode to see what they have found between these two. But I really want to come back to Hatun. Hatun is the one I really want to highlight, because Hatun is the one that has helped me out more than else. We're talking about Hatun Tash, who was my colleague. We were on the ladder together. She was always next to me there at Speaker's Corner every Sunday. And she was the one that actually started collecting these back in 2013, 2014, going around the Arab world. Not herself. She would send other people that to find them. And she came up with this list of 26. So I'm just going to look at the 26. As I put them up, why don't you just go ahead and read them? Because I'm going to desecrate the Arabic.
We'll read a few of them.
Okay.
We don't have to read all.
So there's the first one.
So this one basically Riwayat Susi.
Okay.
This one Riwayat Hafs an Asim, basically Abi Ja'far.
Okay. So and he is actually a reader.
Yeah. Here Qira'at Yaqub.
Okay. Let's go to this guy.
Yeah. This one is Duri.
He's not the only one. There's another one of his coming up.
And you have a Basri in there as well. You have Ibn Amir in here. Here we have Khalaf, basically, عن طريق الدرة. You have Al-Layth ibn Khalid and Warsh and Nafi' طريق الأزرق.
And here's another Warsh.
That's an
Asbahani.
Here we have Riwayat Ibn Wardan. We have Ibn Jammaz in there. Duri here. I mean, there's so many of them. Riwayat Khalaf and Hamza. Al-Kisai.
He's a reader.
Right, Shu'bah.
He is a narrator.
Yeah, Ibn Kathir.
Hisham.
Right, Hisham ibn Ammar.
Al-Bazi.
Ibn Kathir, one more time.
There's Khalaf there.
Right, so
Shoba.
So
I have here in this list.
I think people get the idea that we have so many because the so-called students also disagreed or at least deviated from the reading of their readers. That's why you have multiple times the same name pops up with different narrator.
And here's Qalun. So those are the 26. These are the 26 that we held up back there in 2016 where Muhammad Hijab had his crisis.
They have grown to what, 37 now?
Here's the 37 now that she just sent me this picture. I asked her to say, give me the ones that you have now. She has 37. Well, didn't we just get done saying that there are only 30 authoritative ones?
True.
There's a lot more.
And when we say the various different ways to recite the Quran, we are not talking about different voices or different styles. We're talking about slight differences in pronunciations, slight differences in letters, slight differences in harakat. In other words, if you were to compare two printed Qurans, you're going to see differences between them. Especially those who have been exposed to some of our brothers who live in Algeria or Morocco or other North African countries, they recite the Quran in a slightly different way. Not just a voice or not just a speaking style, but also changes in letters and words and harakat.
Style, but also changes in letters and words and harakat.
And these variances are memorized in specialized institutions known as the schools of the Qira'ah.
So the real evidence, my dear Muslim friends, demonstrates without a doubt 100% that the Islamic claim that the Quran that you have in your hands today is 100% preserved letter for letter, word for word, no variants, only one Quran, perfectly preserved in heaven forever, is absolutely false. It's a lie. So since their claim is false, the Quran is false and Islam is false. And the Quran gets the most important subject wrong, and that's Jesus Christ. Yes, the Quran talks about Jesus, but it's not the true Jesus. Now, a false Jesus is just as bad as not believing in any Jesus, because there's only one true Jesus. Now, people make up idols all the time, and the fact is that the Jesus of the Quran is made up. He is a fairy tale. He has never existed. Those stories that exist within the Quran that involve Jesus, they come from Gnostic Gospels, from infancy Gospels, fairy tales that were made up way after the time of Jesus. It would have been nice if whoever wrote the Quran would have copied the real gospel and put that in the Quran. There wouldn't be all this confusion. But the confusion is there because the wrong Jesus, my dear Muslim friends, is in your Quran. And the right Jesus is the one that's found in history, and it's the same Jesus that's found in the Bible. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He is Yahweh in the flesh, the Lord, who loved you enough. This is the gospel, my dear Muslim friends. It's plain and simple. That Jesus is Lord. He loved you enough to leave his throne in heaven and become a man where he's fully God, fully man, to die on a cross so that you could be saved from your sin. He died a substitute on your behalf. And it was his humanity that died on the cross, not his divinity. His divinity didn't cease to exist. Remember, he's fully God and fully man, so he could die as a man. And he rose from the dead. He raised himself from the dead just as he predicted. In fact, he predicted that he would die by crucifixion. He predicted that he would raise himself from the dead, and that exact thing happened. 3 days after Jesus was laid in the grave, he rose from that tomb. My dear Muslim friends, that is the gospel. That's who the true Jesus really is. And we have seen, even from Muslim leaders, that the Quran is not preserved. It is corrupted according to their own measure. It's corrupted, which means you cannot trust it. That's their measure of the Quran. It's perfect, preserved, letter for letter, word for word, and it's false. It's 100% false. In fact, there's even more than one Quran. So you see, my dear Muslim friends, you have been lied to by your Muslim leaders. It's time to leave them behind, leave Islam, leave the Quran, leave Muhammad, and trust in Jesus, the real Jesus, who loves you and died for you and rose again from the dead. And if you trust in him today, my dear Muslim friends, you will never regret it.